There's something really personal about voting, isn't there? That feeling of having your say.
Absolutely. It's your voice, your stake in things.
Exactly. It feels like the bedrock of democracy. You cast your ballot and, well, it matters. But what happens when that voice gets tangled up, like caught in a maze of rules and paperwork?
Yeah, when the process itself becomes a barrier.
That's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at something significant happening right now in India, specifically this special intensive revision, or SURR, of electoral rolls in Bihar.
And it's unfolding literally as we speak, July 8th, 2025.
Right. And Bihar is gearing up for assembly elections later this year, which makes the timing interesting.
Very interesting.
So you've got this tension. On one side, the official aim is, cleaning up the voter lists, fairness, integrity.
Getting rid of duplicates, deceased voters, that kind of thing. Makes sense on the surface.
But on the other side, it's sparked this huge debate, serious questions about who actually gets counted in the end, and is the whole thing truly transparent?
Uh-huh. The devil really is in the details here.
Okay, so let's unpack this. It kicked off June 25th, 2025 in Bihar, a massive overhaul of voter lists.
And it's based on the 2003 rolls, which is quite a while ago.
Yeah, it's an intensive revision, the kind we haven't seen on quite this scale for some time. The stated goal, as you said, is dealing with duplicates, deceased voters, ineligible names, like a big database cleanup.
But the way they're doing it is...
Yeah.
Well, that's the fascinating part. If you were already on those 2003 rolls, you generally just sit tight unless someone questions your entry.
Okay, so who is affected then?
It's the new applicants.
Yeah.
Or people who've moved since 2003.
Yeah.
And that's a huge number, estimated around 2.93 crore, nearly 30 million people.
Wow, 30 million.
And for them, it's this incredibly complex set of documentation requirements. It's not just proving you exist, it's proving how you exist, genealogically speaking, your family history, basically.
Right, I saw the specifics. It seems intense. Can you break that down?
Sure, it's tiered by birth year. If you were born before July 1st, 1987, you need proof of date or place of birth.
Okay.
Maybe manageable for some.
Maybe.
But if you were born between July 1st, 87 and December 2nd, 2004, you need proof for yourself and one parent.
Okay, getting harder.
And then, for anyone born after December 2nd, 2004, you need proof for yourself and both parents.
Both parents.
Yeah.
That's a huge ask for many people. Imagine trying to dig up those documents, especially if they weren't systematically issued or kept.
Exactly. It's like trying to find, I don't know, your grandpa's school report card. Maybe it exists, maybe not. And this immediately raises the question, who does this hit hardest?
Marginalized communities, I guess?
Precisely. Our analysis points straight there. Poor communities, Dalits, Muslims, tribal groups, migrants, people who historically haven't had easy access to formal registration systems.
Birth certificates weren't always a given, especially in rural areas, right?
Not at all. It's a legacy issue. So think about a young tribal woman, say 25 years old, eligible to vote. But if she and her parents lack birth certificates, she just can't comply.
He's stuck.
Or migrant workers, constantly moving for work. How do they easily prove a birthplace, especially if the records are back in a village they left years ago, maybe in another state entirely?
It sounds like millions could face real barriers.
It's potentially millions, yes. These aren't edge cases.
And the timeline for this whole thing, incredibly tight. Forms were due July 25th originally.
Yeah, with claims and objections running through August, final list publication set for September 30th.
But I heard that even after they extended the deadline by early July, something like only 14% of prospective voters had submitted forms.
That figure, around 14% by July 6th, is what we've seen reported. It suggests a huge number of people were struggling or maybe weren't even aware.
Which points to another issue: awareness campaigns, especially in rural areas. How effective have they been?
That's a major concern. Plus, you're relying heavily on local officials, booth-level officers, for verification. That can lead to inconsistencies, maybe even bias, intentional or not.
And there's no clear way to track your application status or appeal easily if you're removed.
Well, the fact that the names being deleted aren't even published is a big red flag for transparency.
Yeah.
It really muddies the waters. You don't know who's out or why easily.
Okay, so you have these practical hurdles, the tight timeline, the documentation, and then comes the politics.
Oh, yes.
Because this isn't happening in a vacuum. It's Bihar, months before assembly elections.
Right.
And it's become a real political battleground.
Absolutely.
We saw that delegation from the NDA Bloc Congress, RJD, SP, others meeting the Election Commission on July 2nd. They came out calling the meeting disappointing, Even unfriendly.
Strong words. They're clearly very concerned.
Yeah, a Congress leader specifically warned about mass disenfranchisement, basically saying this isn't just bureaucratic tidying up, it's
Yeah.
potentially a strategic move to, well, rig the lists.
That's the accusation from their side, that millions of legitimate voters, likely those leaning towards the opposition, could be excluded.
But the other side, the BJP, they see it differently.
Completely differently. They've dismissed the opposition's claims as fear-mongering. They maintain this is a routine, necessary process,
Their argument being,
that it cleans up the rolls, addresses issues like illegal immigrants, duplicate voters, things they argue have become problems due to demographic shifts. They see it as essential for fair elections.
so two totally opposing views on the motive and effect. And you mentioned booth-level agents earlier.
Yes, over 150,000 booth-level agents appointed by the parties are monitoring this process on the ground. It shows how high the stakes are felt by everyone. Intense scrutiny.
And it's not just political fighting, it's gone illegal, too.
That's right. The Association for Democratic Reforms, ADR, a well-known NGO.
Yeah, I know them. They do a lot on electoral reform.
They filed a petition in the Supreme Court just a few days ago, July 5th, challenging the whole Sarar process.
On what grounds?
Arguing it violates fundamental rights. The right to vote, basically. Adult suffrage. Also non-discrimination and equality under the Constitution.
So this is now a constitutional question before the highest court. It's moved beyond just political arguments.
It has. It's a legal showdown now.
And while we're talking about process and fairness, this brings up the bigger issue of public trust, doesn't it? Trust in the Election Commission itself.
It certainly does. And there's data suggesting that trust is already, well, shaky for some.
You mean the National Election Study 2024 by Lockneedy CSDS?
Exactly. Their findings were quite revealing. About 12% of people surveyed said they had not much trust in the Election Commission.
And another 7%.
Had no trust at all. So combined, that's nearly a fifth of the respondents expressing significant doubt. That's a worrying baseline when you're undertaking something this contentious.
Yeah, that context matters. And then there's this other directive that popped up about deleting polling station footage.
Ah, yes. That's another layer, adding to the transparency concerns.
So the EC ordered all polling station footage, photos, videos, CCTV, webcasts to be deleted within 45 days of results, unless there's a specific election petition filed.
That's the new rule. Previously, that footage was kept for much longer, sometimes 3 months, sometimes up to a year.
Which allowed time for scrutiny, right?
Yeah.
If issues came up later.
Precisely. It was a safeguard, a way to go back and check if allegations of irregularities surfaced after the immediate post-election period.
Now it's 45 days, it feels like recording a complex experiment and then wiping the tape before anyone can double-check the results. Trust us, it was fair.
Well, critics definitely see it that way. They argue it drastically reduces transparency and makes investigating potential fraud much harder down the line.
What's the EC's justification?
They cite storage efficiency, managing the vast amounts of data. But the timing, alongside the SIR in Bihar, it inevitably raises questions about accountability.
It doesn't exactly help build that public trust we were just talking about.
No, it certainly fuels the skepticism for those already concerned. So if we try to connect these dots, the documentation hurdles, the political fight, the legal challenge, the trust issues, what does it all point to?
The inclusivity of democracy itself.
I think so. Fundamentally, it's about who gets to participate. The right to vote is supposed to be universal for citizens. Now, the Election Commission's goal of electoral integrity is, of course, legitimate. Nobody wants fraudulent lists.
But the method matters.
The execution, exactly. And this process with these specific requirements and this timing seems tilted towards potential exclusion, even if unintended. We've had intensive revisions before in India, back in the 50s, 60s, 80s, even 2003, which is the base year here.
But this feels different.
The scale, combined with the timing, right before a major state election, feels pretty unprecedented. That context is crucial.
So for people listening, for voters, what are the takeaways here? It seems crucial to think about alternatives, right? How else could you clean up lists without potentially disenfranchising people?
Absolutely. Could things like Aadhaar, the unique ID system, be used more effectively for verification, perhaps? It's already linked to many services.
What about awareness? Really robust campaigns that reach everyone.
Crucial. And proper training and resources for those local officials doing the verification. Empowering them to handle cases fairly, especially complex ones involving lack of old documents. Sensitivity is key.
And on the transparency front, maybe keeping that polling footage longer would help rebuild some trust.
It seems like a relatively straightforward measure that could bolster confidence. Small steps towards greater openness.
You know, your earlier analogy about digging up Grandpa's school report, it made me think. It's like planning a big family wedding, and suddenly the host demands everyone show their birth certificate to prove they're related.
Right. Utter chaos.
Half the guests would be confused, the other half offended, and you know Uncle Bob is going to start a fight.
Huh. Yeah, that captures some of the feeling around this Bihar voter revision. It's messy, it's definitely contentious, and it highlights this real struggle for democratic participation.
That tension between wanting clean lists and making sure every legitimate voice gets counted. So as Bihar moves towards its elections, this SR process is really at a crossroads, a critical point.
It encapsulates that core tension. Electoral integrity versus the risk of excluding the vulnerable, the marginalized.
Yeah.
And it really reminds us, doesn't it, that just having information isn't enough. It's about understanding the context, the implications, considering different viewpoints.
Thinking critically about how these processes actually work on the ground.
Exactly. Hopefully our chat today gives people some food for thought on that.
Indeed. And maybe as we wrap up, here's a final thought to consider. In any situation where democratic processes feel challenged, like this one potentially in Bihar, what does it really take to ensure every single voice that should be heard actually is heard? What does true inclusion look like in practice? We hope this deep dive gave you a clear picture of the situation in Bihar, maybe some surprising details, and perhaps a new perspective on these vital issues. Until next time, keep digging, keep asking questions, and keep seeking those aha moments.